Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host Khalid. But today is the 25th of March 2025. These are the stories that we will be deciphering during the course of the show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with the Ukraine-Russia conflict that has now entered its 1125th day today. Now, the major point is, of course, the talks that have been held between Russia and the US. And of course the outcome of that, and before that there were the talks between Ukraine and the US side that also happened, and now there are going to be again talks between the US and Ukraine side, because the US side is going to reiterate to Ukraine what Russia has said as far as a future peace proposal is concerned. A lot of reservations are present as far as Russia is concerned on how to move forward, or what are the modalities regarding this ceasefire or peace agreement. This and more will be discussed in our first segment. Secondly, we'll be talking about the APHC that has denounced Indian crackdown on Hurriyat leaders in Kashmir. Nothing new there, but we want to highlight it because it's an issue that is as old as time, let's put it that way, because it has been around more than 70 years that this issue has been with the United Nations Security Council, and nothing tangible has happened since. Resolutions are there, but the application of these resolutions is another thing altogether. To add to that, to the misery of the Kashmiris is, of course, the abrogation of Article 370 and 35A as well, and all that has been happening since then. We will be highlighting that in our second segment. Finally, we'll be talking about the International Day of Remembrance of the Victims of Slavery and the transatlantic slave trade that is being observed across the world today. This day is a time for reflection for everybody, because there are still remnants of slavery present in different parts of the world. It is also a time to educate our youth on what they need to do and how they need to move forward in order to completely abolish slavery and the mindset of slavery from our society. This is the lineup for today. Let's begin with our first segment, and that concerns the Ukraine-Russia conflict that has entered its 1125th day today. Good news maybe on the ceasefire front, but we'll say good news when it is actually implemented, and once implemented that it moves forward as well, not like Gaza that, you know, after the first phase the whole fighting begins from the Israeli side as well. We've been joined by two guests. Let me introduce them to you one by one. Zamir Ahmed Awan, foreign affairs expert, joins us in the studio. Thank you very much, Zamir Saab, to have joined us. And our favorite Dr. Amna Mahmood, international relations analyst, also joins us online. She'll be inshallah with us during the entirety of the show. Thank you very much, Dr. Amna, to have joined us. We'll begin with you, Zamir Saab. Zamir Saab, the US and Russian officials have ended their talks in Riyadh. The Riyadh seems to be that center point where all these talks are converging, at least that is concerned. The White House so says progress has been made in these Riyadh talks, and that a positive announcement is expected in the near future. How do you view these talks, and what kind of outcome do you expect?
On the surface, it is something very good. It is good news that definitely on the broader base they are agreed to end the war. I mean, the bloodshed is going to end. This is good news. But still, a lot of things has to be done. That is the nitty-gritties, the details of the deal. There will be many concerns from different houses. Like the Ukrainian, they have the concern, what will be the future of Ukraine after the deal, after the end of the war? Will they enjoy the same sovereignty or pre-war sovereignty? And also, European Union, European countries also have some of their own concerns. Russia also has its own concern that this deal is just to end the war, or it will guarantee that there will be no NATO expansion and Ukraine will never be part of NATO again.
But that is why the whole conflict began from in the first place, because Russia had serious reservations about Ukraine joining NATO, and that is what the European nations want, and even what Ukraine wants. Zelensky has openly said he's willing to step down if Ukraine becomes a member of the NATO.
And even that, Russia has a concern that no European troops will be deployed in Ukraine in future.
That is also true. So I don't know what happens to the peacekeeping forces as well, where they will come from if they do come. Dr. Amna, US officials are also going to hold more talks with the Ukrainian side. They already held talks on Sunday with the Ukrainian side, and now these talks are going to resume, because I'm sure they're going to say whatever has happened during the talks with the Russian side. Ukraine is eager to see whether Russia agrees to a deal that will protect the Black Sea shipping, particularly the cessation of the shelling of Ukrainian ports of Odessa, Kherson and Mykolaiv. what kind of a deal as far as Black Sea shipping are we looking at? Will there be a deal that will benefit both Ukraine and Russia? Will it be a balanced deal, or will there be a tilt to one side?
Thank you, Omar, for inviting me as usual. I think that one thing we have to understand that the US is actually facilitating the talks between Ukraine and Russia, and they are not in a position to have shared the same table for negotiations. Till the time they are trying to bring them on same negotiation table, and they are facilitating dealing with one party and conveying to the other. So, they are in this situation right now. And secondly, as Zamir sahab mentioned, that there are number of irritants. There are number of irritants which are to be agreed upon before signing a deal, and that is looking far ahead of concluding a deal right now, because Russia has its own reservations and US is just thinking as it can dictate some of the deal. That is not possible in case of Russia, because Russia is in a stronger position and they are not ready to compromise on the same point. As you said, that was the starting point of this conflict, that there would be no eastward expansion of NATO, there would be no deployment of European armies or US armies or any mediator army peacekeeping in Ukraine. And one of the most irritant is that Russia want to make it accept that what gain they have done, that is they have captured 70%
they don't want to revert from that gain.
Yeah, 70% area of Ukraine they have captured. They want to legalize it. They want to have a legitimacy of their sovereignty that they are ruling there, and that would be, you know, not acceptable for the Ukraine at this moment. So I think that deal certainly would be a compromise. And US has to balance Putin and Zelensky both, and Zelensky is not a position to assert himself, but as far as his national prestige is concerned, he will not compromise, even being on the weak position. But at the same time, both parties need to have a talk, and they have to come to some ceasefire or truce that is inevitable for the peace of the world and for the trade coming from Black Sea, going from Black Sea. And you know, the grain market is very stressed because of the hurdles in trade from Ukraine, and mineral resources are very important. And at this point, US wanted to have a deal immediately because they are interested in rare minerals in Ukraine, and they don't want to let Russia capture that area before the deal. So they want to have deal immediately so that they can make a deal with Ukraine. And if they would have to deal this for these minerals with Russia, certainly Russia would not accept. So it is the critical point, and US interests are at the priority of Mr. Trump.
All right, US interests are, I mean, that should be the priority of Mr.
I
Trump.
just wanted to make it clear that it is not the humanity, it is not the world peace consideration.
So
of
it's
world
a deal
peace.
of priorities, of who gets who gets what at the end of the day.
At the end of the day, and it is all political economy at the core of the international
relations. That I totally understand. Mr. Trump, after all, is a businessman.
Yeah.
Zamir Saab, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov confirms that the US and the Russian side discussed the resumption of the 2022 Black Sea grain initiative. Moscow had, pulled out of the initiative in 2023 because it has accused the West of failing to uphold its commitments to ease sanctions on Russia's own exports of farm products and fertilizers. As Dr. Amna said, it's also more to do with political economy. How do you see this initiative, this Black Sea grain initiative, if Russia comes back to it? Will all parties benefit from it, or will Russia particularly benefit from it?
Black Sea is a very important sea route for trading, and many countries are the beneficiary of this route. Russia has already occupied major part of the Black Sea on the Ukrainian side. Only one port, Odessa, is still under Ukrainian control. Of course, Russia will be the major beneficiary of this Black Sea trade, and of course, American will ensure that Odessa, or at least some of the ports, will be under Ukrainian control after the peace deal, and they will ensure that the safe cargo will be there handled. Even the economy, energy, or grain, or minerals, American will guarantee that there will be smooth cargo.
All right, Dr. Amna, coming back to you said you said the US was facilitating these talks, but at the end of the day, these are talks between the Russian and Ukrainian side. But there seems to be a zero trust between the two sides, as far as the possibility of direct talks is concerned. Can Ukraine and Russia, in your point of view, realistically talk peace or reach peace?
Actually, it's a matter of insecurity, and it's a matter of Zelensky's survival as well, because Zelensky is building his narrative on the basis of the European fear of Russia. Ironically, a few days back, I met a German diplomat, and she was talking about her grandma. Then she was the survivor of Second World War, and she said that she remain in fear of Russian invasion at any time till the time of her death, because that was the trauma of Second World War. And Zelensky wanted to encash that sentiment among the European population and European governments. And if Europe will not come out of that, and Europe would not realize that the world has changed and the ground realities are changed, and they have to make alliance with any country, they are sharing interest. Right now, Europe is sharing interest with Russia and Ukraine both in terms of the supply of grain and supply of energy. Otherwise, their economies are just not able to be at the cost of rising cost of energies and grain as well. So I think that Zelensky will not retreat. He will be there, otherwise his survival would not be possible. And by the way, you have heard that in next election he is not going to survive, because Ukrainians are not satisfied with his performance in this war, handling this war. On the other hand, Russia is not ready to compromise, because they want to capture the whole Ukraine. So there is no compulsion on Russia to end this war, because initially they were in trouble when they were facing the sanctions, but they made it through selling their oil through India and other countries, and in this way their economy is right, so they can proceed in war. And right now, when US has ended its cooperation and its aid to Ukraine, it would be hard for Ukraine to survive. And you see that in last week they have major gains. Russian gains are much higher than the pace in the previous months. So
I think there is a moral high ground that Russia has also, because of the way the US has been supporting Russia of late, because the previous government was not supporting or was not willing to even talk properly with the Russian side, but this government wants to, because they want an end to this conflict. And that is why maybe Russia has, it has given it confidence.
Confidence, and then public opinion in Europe is getting changed. Public opinion is actually, they wanted to end up this conflict, because this is the first time Europe faced the disaster of war themselves, the refugee crisis. We have been facing that. We can have another war, no problem. On a lighter note.
I hope that doesn't happen.
Yes, but they never faced. Europe was battleground in Second World War, and after that they were just playing with the world as a part of NATO. But still they are in crisis, rising cost of living, that is a matter, unemployment, and then refugee invasions as well, because as you will create conflict in the world, the conflict driven region would be evacuated and people would come as a refugee to peaceful regions, and Europe is one of them. So it's quite challenging for Ukraine and Russia. And I think that unless they would come to some agreed upon point to sit together on the negotiation table directly, there would be no solution, because US is having own interests. They are pursuing their own interests, and they are not actually in line with Ukraine and Russian interests, except to go for a ceasefire.
All right. Zamir Sahab, the Ukrainian side was also quite pleased, should I say, or content with their meetings with the US side as well. You know, those talks ended on Sunday. There's going to be a new round of talks between the Ukraine side and the US side later as well. Ukraine Defense Minister Mr. Omar, who led the delegation, said the talks were productive. He said both the groups discussed the protection of critical and energy infrastructure from these attacks. This is also one point that has been consistently raised during these talks as to how the energy infrastructures are going to be, you know, preserved or protected from any further attacks. Do you feel there will be some kind of an arrangement regarding that? And do you feel also the US could benefit directly or indirectly from that?
As a matter of fact, Russia has the upper hand. Russia is the winning in this conflict. So Ukraine is suffering. So if they lessen their suffering, they are satisfied. They have no other option left with them. So ending war is the last option for them. Protecting their infrastructure, the energy or other infrastructure is their best saving if they can do it. So they have to agree upon all these things, whatever is possible, because they are not in the strong position. They have very few cards with them. So they are satisfied, they have to be. And who is the beneficiary? America? Of course, America is going to have a great deal with the Ukraine about the mineral resources. And if there is no infrastructure, there is no energy, there is no transportation, the American dream of beneficiary getting benefit out of Ukrainian minerals will be not fulfilled. So ultimately, it is a businessman deal.
All right. Dr. Amna, the European Union is very concerned about it all, because even when these talks started, the EU was sidelined. It was not informed, and these talks happened without the intervention. So there is also a lot of skepticism within the powers as to whether Putin is ready to make these meaningful concessions, or will it stick to what they call maximalistic demands from Putin. Can a middle ground ever be reached in your point of view? Will the trust deficit between the EU and the major players as far as this peace deal ever be, ever find a solution?
Omar, I think that this is not fair with the US, with the Europe as Mr. Trump is dealing right now, because the major stakeholder is Europe. And Mr. Trump is portraying as the whole conflict was because of Europe, so he is coming as the savior. So I think that this approach is not right, and Europe is not recepting that. Europe is not responding positively to that. The other thing that the NATO is in question, because this NATO was against the communist bloc, and since there is no communist bloc, so there is no justification for NATO. And as Mr. Trump is dealing with the NATO countries that they have to contribute 5% of their GDP to NATO, otherwise he is taking his hands off. I think that that is actually another reason for discontentment in European Union, and European Union is having its own inherent default lines as well. So this is the time that Europe should think in terms of its own supremacy, as they were thinking in 1993 when they made European Union, and they come out of US supremacy and they should establish their own identity. Only then can they resolve their crisis. Otherwise, they are paying a lot, 2% of their GDP, and they are 26 countries and 20 of them are paying. It means that they are contributing in fact more than US as a whole. So I think that there would be a win-win deal when Europe can assert itself. Europe would follow its own interests, because ultimately Europe is the stakeholder, because US is having no energy crisis because of this. US is having no grain crisis because of Ukraine. It is the Europe that is suffering. And at the end, Europe is at the, they are in the range of their Russian missiles. So it is hard to start war with Russia by any of the European countries. That's why they are avoiding Ukrainian membership to NATO, because they don't want to be on the hit list of Russia right now. So it is the Europe that is going to suffer. It is the Europe that is suffering right now. So there would be a win-win deal when Europe and its concern would be addressed. Otherwise, that would not be any sustainable agreement between Russia and
the fact is, Dr. Amna, when you look at what happened between Israel and Palestine, sustainability of any agreement is extremely important.
And US was the guarantor, and US has failed. Mr. Trump has failed because now they have taken 400 death toll and more than 200 of the children, and that is the highest toll.
Yes, of course, and we are talking of Palestine this moment. You know, Dr. Amna pointed out about the European Union. Now, the United Kingdom and French defense chiefs have again met in London to discuss plans for the allied countries, that is in the European Union, to safeguard this potential Ukrainian ceasefire as part of the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer's so-called coalition of the willing. I think this is a very important term, coalition of the willing. They also discussed efforts to galvanize the EU's response to the situation in Ukraine. What role is the European Union going to play in the coming days and weeks if and when this peace deal is agreed upon by both the sides?
I don't think that there is any space for European Union to play any role, because President Putin will not accept any role from the European Union.
This he has made very clear.
They might accept international peacekeeping force from non-European countries like Turkey, Pakistan or China, from any other country maybe. Putin will not accept the European troops in Ukraine. However, there are implications of the European Union, and they will formulate their own strategy how to deal the post-war era with Russia. They have to think something. And on the other hand, European Union is a collection of 26, 27 countries. Only 2 or 3 or 4 maybe are in a position to develop their own armies or defense industry. Most of the European Union countries are not in
and only 2 are nuclear powers, if I'm not wrong.
Only 2 are the nuclear powers.
All right.
And now anyhow, Poland and Germany are thinking seriously to be a nuclear power.
All right, Dr. Amna, I would like to, highlight a statement by Zelensky, who says, no matter what we say to our partners today, we need to get Russian President Vladimir Putin to give a real order to stop the strikes. Whoever brought this war must take it back, quote unquote. I'd like to understand, with the fighting still going on between the two sides, Russian missiles have struck the Ukrainian city of Sumy. More than 80 people have been injured. A Ukrainian artillery strike has killed 6 people, including 3 journalists in eastern Ukraine's Russian-occupied Luhansk region. This tit for tat is continuing despite the fact that there is also meaningful talks that are happening at the same time. Are Ukraine and Russia, in your point of view, on different tangents when it comes to a peace deal?
Obviously, because they are following conflicting interests. Russia want to capture the whole Ukraine and at least want to restrict on 70% Ukraine and establish its legitimate sovereignty over there, and Ukraine is, they wanted to roll over everything and they want to come to pre-war position, and that is not acceptable certainly for Mr. Putin. And I think that if US would sponsor some deal, that would be in a compromise between the two, that some of the area may be vacated and the rest of the area would go to Russia. And obviously that is very important, that European Union is very stressed at this moment, and you see that Britain would take the side of obviously US. They are having the Me Too policy from the very beginning after Second World War, because their capacity has been finished as the great power. They are just as the stooge of working as the yes man of US. And same is the case with France. France asserts itself, and they are under a challenge environment because they don't want to follow the dictates of US and they are following European interests. But as Zamir Sahab very rightly mentioned, that very few countries can take the burden of defense, and they don't want to come out of NATO, because the NATO survival is actually their survival, what they suppose. So I think that there would be a crisis situation in your EU if they would be threatened by US to come to pull himself out, Mr. Trump pull himself out of NATO.
All right.
So I think the situation is quite complex. That is not a bilateral deal. That is a multilateral deal, because the interest of the whole European continent, the interest of whole Russia, and as well as US are involved. US will not compromise less than their deal of rare resources, and they are adamant on that. So I think that UN will be involved when there would be peacekeeping forces. The question of peacekeeping forces come that. So it would be challenging, because US is not having good deal with the UN these days. They have withdrawn from number of institutions. They are stopping their contribution to UN, and it would be difficult for UN to. And they are not working well in Gaza and Israel crisis, and that the whole sloganism is going back and rolling back rather, and again Palestine is the target. So I think it would be challenging for the whole world to trust on Mr. Trump.
All right, the trust deficit.
It's a matter of trust, because if he could establish its trust in Israel and Gaza, only then people can trust in case of Ukraine and Russia.
All right.
So that is not visible.
But that is, of course, the Israeli interest that the US will always abide by. Zamir Saab, talking of interests and talking of confidence building measures, Putin has said, and I quote, he has given his reservations about how this ceasefire deal is going to be monitored once implemented. He had said during a news conference on the 13th of March, and I quote, who will give orders to stop the hostilities, who will determine where and who has violated a possible ceasefire agreement for 2,000 kilometers. That was, of course, he has also demanded a halt of the arms supply to Kiev and a suspension of Ukraine's military mobilization. There are also hints that both sides plan to iron out these technicalities during their meeting that has happened. Could a definitive decision be taken in this respect? The reservations of Putin, could they be adhered to? I mean, I don't know how this could happen, but what mechanism could be implemented?
Definitely, these nitty-gritties has to be discussed bilaterally, and Russia will dictate all the terms and conditions. It is matter of who is the winner. The winner will dictate, not the loser will dictate. And this will be achieved very easily. There will be no big issue in that one. The concern is that America is making the peace deal, but at what terms and conditions to America itself. They have their own interest. They might give some favor to Russia in Ukraine, but on other part of the world, they might get favor from the Russia. That's the Greenland, that is the Gaza, that's the other places. So we have to be also
cautious
vigilant.
Also, you know, the 11th of March statement regarding the US-Ukraine ceasefire statement talked about the exchange of prisoners of war, release of civilian detainees, return of forcibly transferred Ukrainian children during these 30 days as well. This is also one of the confidence building measures that has been highlighted by the US side that will be discussed or has been discussed. Could this happen? Could this eventually, these terms and conditions that have been laid down, could these actually be implementable, or do you feel there will be lacunas or bottlenecks in these?
Initially, it looks difficult that can be implemented, but if both sides come to the conclusion that they have to implement and they have to enforce, certainly that would be done. Otherwise, you know, initially it is not very easy for any of the country, rather not only Ukraine but for Russia as well. But I think that can be materialized if the will is there and then sponsors are also standing with them.
All right. A lot of uncertainties, but a lot of certainties as well because of the US pressure, and maybe some kind of a deal will
even after signing the deal.
It all depends on how you implement that deal. You know, the 30 days or more or less, I don't know how it's going to be thwarted between the sides, but whatever happens should be implemented in letter and principle.
Yes.
Last question to you, Zamir Saab. a group of Republican and Democratic US senators writes a letter to push the Trump administration to transfer and push its allies to transfer more than 300 billion US dollars of seized Russian assets to help Ukraine and not just use the debt's interest to support Kiev. It was this letter was a rare example of the Democrats and Republicans getting together in order to write a joint letter to the Trump administration to be tougher with Moscow. But the question is, will the Trump administration agree to this?
No, Trump is not that kind of person. He is more friendly with Putin.
All right. So
he will bear all the pressures.
All right, okay. I think the question has been answered. We will see what happens in the coming days. Thank you very much, Zamir Saab, to have joined us for this first segment. We will be back after a short break to discuss Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. This always brings a lot of sentiments to whosoever is hearing or talking about it, because of the very fact that it has been decades that this issue remains unresolved in the United Nations, despite so many resolutions that have been passed by the Security Council, because of a lack of implementation and of course because of the various interests that certain sides have in continuing with this status quo as far as the Indian held region is that. But to the detriment of what? To the detriment of the people of the Indian held valley, who continue to stay in an environment that is what can I say, that is extremely dark, that is extremely pessimistic, that does not give them their due rights. The only thing that needs to be done is to give them the due right to self-determination. That is not happening. And to add to that is the searches, the incarcerations and what not. We'll be highlighting that in this segment. We've been joined by two guests. One guest continues from our last segment. Dr. Ahmed is still with us, and our second guest who joins us, who is also a very dear friend of mine, Altaf Hussain, Wani Saab, a Kashmiri leader. Thank you very much, Wani Saab, to have joined us. I'll begin with you. Indian forces deploy huge forces backed by commandos and drones and sniffer dogs in this coordinated search operation in Kathua district of IIOJK. This operation is continuing since a couple of days in several areas, including the dense jungles of Kathua. Why is this happening?
This exposes what India always campaigns, that there is normalcy in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. They have held elections over there, they have the state assembly there, and there is development, there is everything. And these things, these siege and search operations and also the forces backed by commandos and sniffing dogs and other things, drones, this says what Indian occupied Kashmir really is, what the situation there is. These are the areas in Jammu area where the majority of the people are Hindus. But we have seen in most recently one incident there when they during siege and search operation, they took one boy, Makhandeen, 25. He was arrested and then he was tortured, and then he went to he was released. After that, he was forced to confess that he has some contacts of the freedom fighters. Then he went to the mosque, and in the mosque he took Quran in his hands and he made a video of that, and that video went viral, that I am taking my life because I don't want other people to do it. And so it went viral, that video, and he committed suicide after that he was so bitterly beaten. I am not in a position to provide them the contacts which they forced me to confess, but they will again beat me, they will again torture me severely. So he took his life. And it was not only that that video has totally depicted that what Indian forces do while you are in their custody. So that shows these crackdowns and this torture in custody, and we have seen more than 8,000 extrajudicial killings during these tortures in incarceration in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And this exposes the whole mantra of India's normalcy, their development, and all that.
A lot of raids are also happening, Dr. Amna, in the homes of different Hurriyat leaders that belong to parties such as the Jammu and Kashmir Democratic Freedom Party, Tehreek-e-Hurriyat Jammu and Kashmir Muslim League, People's Freedom League, in Bandipora, in Handwara, in Dharmapura, in Warapura, in Badran, and in Budgam as well. Is the Indian government now getting extremely frustrated because they are not achieving what thought they could achieve easily, and despite decades of this brutality on the Kashmiri people, still the essence of the right to self-determination, the essence to fight back is there?
Omar, actually in political science there is a concept of legitimacy. If your rule is legitimate, you need less forces, and with the deployment of the army, police forces, paramilitary forces, you can judge that there is no writ of Indian government, despite all that, as Wani sab mentioned and you mentioned, that all brutalities, people refuse to submit, and you cannot take away the right of a nation to be free and self-rule. And that India is not recognizing. India is not recognizing not only in case of Jammu and Kashmir, but its own states, as you mentioned, that number of other states, you know, Chhattisgarh, there was a crackdown yesterday, Manipur, you see that what happened there.
That has been happening since quite some time.
Yes, and I feel as the student of international politics and internal politics of India, I feel when there is internal pressure from the regular states of provinces of India, they shift all their frustration to Indian illegally occupied Kashmir.
All right.
And they start their crackdown to just divert the attention, because the Indian people normally think that keeping Kashmir is a matter of prestige and honor for India. So they divert all their attention to Kashmir, and they show that actually this area need attention, and then rest of the states are, you know, they are ignored. But I think that all of the states are realizing right now that Indians, what they are doing, Indian forces, what they are doing, Indian army, what they are doing, and federal union government, what they are doing with the states of India, the provinces of India, that is simply replicated at a larger scale in Indian illegally occupied Kashmir. And we see the latest wave that they are abducting, they are killing, and making them, and you see that from this documentary you can see what is the weather there, how intensity of harsh weather, there is no facility provided to them, and this development is just a drama. They give them notice to evacuate that place, and they were the ancestral home of Kashmiris in Srinagar and around, and they are converted to in business hubs.
But you know, a lot has been happening to completely erode Kashmiri history, Kashmiri culture, Kashmiri heritage, Kashmiri language, and the list goes on and on. They want to completely erase the Kashmiri identity, the identity on which the people in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir stand.
They just wanted land, actually.
But they want much more than land. They want the entire Kashmiri identity.
Yes.
Altaf, Wani Saab, Pakistan's newly appointed permanent representative to the UN, Ambassador Asim Iftikhar Ahmed Saab, while talking at a flag hoisting ceremony at the Pakistan's mission to the UN to mark Pakistan Day, talks about Pakistan's role as far as highlighting the Kashmir issue on different fora is concerned. He says, and I quote, he highlights the grave human rights violations that are happening in the IIOJK, and he said this cannot be ignored. He said supporting the Kashmiri people's right to self-determination is Pakistan's moral, political and diplomatic responsibility, and also committed to continuing the advocacy of the inalienable right to for self-determination for the Kashmiri people. How important has been Pakistan's role as far as the moral, political and diplomatic support to IIOJK is concerned?
You see, Pakistan remains the only country which has been raising the voice for the people of Kashmir, for their rights, for the atrocities which India has been committing in occupied Kashmir. All the governments, all the people in Pakistan, they have been there, and it remains Pakistan's foreign policy's one of the fundamentals is Kashmir. So Ambassador Asim Iftikhar has reiterated that Pakistan will continue to support, and the people of Kashmir take it as a pride in it that Pakistan continues to support, and Pakistan should continue to support the people's resistance in Kashmir. Pakistan has a duty on one hand, because being the party to the dispute, and on the other hand, Kashmiris treat Pakistan Pakistan as their advocate in international arena. So Pakistan has the responsibility, and they are doing that responsibility very much, and the reiteration by the ambassador gives people of Kashmir a moral courage to confront the world's third largest army, to confront the third largest army with total impunity, the regime which is backed by Hindutva ideology in Indian occupied Kashmir, which has banned all political parties in Indian occupied Kashmir, which has, as you were talking about, has decided to erase the identity of the people of Kashmir. They have erased the history of Kashmir from the literature, from the syllabus of the books, textbooks and all that. And they continue to do it. Along with that, on the economic front, what they are doing for the people of Kashmir is that they are taking away the jobs of the people by throwing them out, suspecting them that they are the relatives of the freedom fighters, they are helping the freedom fighters. To them, they have nominated 57 people as terrorists till date, but to them, in practical, all the Kashmiris are terrorists. So they continue to do that, and with that, with all military might, with all the draconian powers, what they have been doing. At the top of that is the frustration which Indians have at this time, because the international community, at least the highest office of the human rights, or office of the High Commissioner himself spoke on the human rights situation of Kashmir. That was, in a way, a big frustration for the Indians, and the Indians, as we know, that they think themselves as they are unaccountable. Nobody can make them accountable at any time. But international community has started looking at what Indian current political dispensation is doing, not only in occupied Jammu and Kashmir, but throughout India, with the Indian minorities, with the different communities in India, and only they want that the Hindutva agenda which they have, that should be implemented. And they have taken each and every organ of the government has been taken up by these radical Hindus.
That I agree with you, and there's much more happening as well. Amna, Mahmood Sahaba, the fact is that Article 370-35A, August 2019, has been a very dark chapter since on that day and since then for the Kashmiri people. Introduction of domicile laws, since this revocation of the articles, which allows non-Kashmiris, particularly Hindus, to settle in the region, which is also threatening the ethnic and religious composition of the Indian Hill Valley. To add to that, India wants Pakistan's acceptance of this August 5th, 2019 abrogation of the articles to be the starting point for any re-engagement, and it is not willing to show any kind of flexibility, much less offer any concessions, because Pakistan time and again asked the Indian side to come and participate in talks, and let's handle the thorny issues once and for all. The last attempt was made in February this year by our Prime Minister, but India will never do that because it wants to come on its own terms, and it wants that Pakistan accepts the abrogation of Articles 370 and 35A, which Pakistan will never accept. What now? What will happen then? If meaningful talks do not happen between the Pakistani and Indian sides, and India is not willing to budge from its stance as to how it wants to tackle this issue, what is the fate of the Kashmiri people then?
Still, I feel that the fate of Kashmiri people will be decided by the Kashmiri people. They are adamant and they are not ready to compromise. But coming back to the point you have raised, that it is very critical because India have been doing this since 1990s. That is the time of composite dialogue, then comprehensive dialogue. They say now Kashmir is discussed, now come to next agenda. And if they are not going to sit on the negotiation table, then there would be a deadlock. But Pakistan is not ready to compromise on its standpoint, and same is the case with Kashmiri. Omar, here I would point out, I have gone through a statement of Hurriyat leader recently, that we want a prosperous and strong Pakistan. That would be the strength of Kashmiris. And we should also realize that the strength of Pakistan by economic, political stability gained by the people of Pakistan, that would be the strength of Pakistan to assert its own agendas in international relations. You remember in 1962, Pandit Nehru traveled to Pakistan to sign Indus Water Treaty. And it was the power of Pakistani government, economy, people that he has to come. So we have to think in terms of strengthening Pakistan, to stand with Kashmir. Otherwise, on a weaker position, India would raise such slogans and threats as they are doing right now.
And they continue to do that, and there have been so many examples of that in the recent days. For over 7 decades, Wani Saab, Kashmiris have suffered from violence, military occupation and forced disappearances, arbitrary detention, systematic discrimination, extrajudicial killings, sexual violence, mass arrests. There are mass graves. There are instances of torture. You yourself pointed to the boy of 25 years old, who took his own life because of that. The use of pellet guns. How can we not forget how they use the pellet guns and how they paraded with people on their jeeps with pellet gun injuries? Looking at all of this, do you feel the ICC or the ICJ can intervene?
See, ICJ or ICC cannot intervene by themselves. Somebody has to tell them to intervene. Some state has to go there, or there has to be some recommendation from the UN General Assembly of Security Council for that. And they can give the judgment, they can say something, but we know that international law is so weak. We have seen in case of Gaza, we have seen in case of many of the Rohingya people, we say the judgment from ICJ, from ICC, we have seen in Gaza cases, but this is might is right. In the international law, these international laws are always to be implemented by the stronger forces. They implement those, they make those, and they know how to deal with that. And we have seen now how the US president is taking everything out of that international law. He has his own international order at hand. So, in this, as Dr. Amna was telling you, that we need to be economically prosperous. Unless and until Pakistan is economically prosperous, we cannot make the international headways. We cannot ask anybody for help. So, we can see that people of Kashmir have resisted all these, what you said, in past 70 years. There has been highs and lows in this moment. There is nothing to worry for that. We have seen highs and lows in this moment. At some stages, India was about to leave the Kashmir, but soon they had their hand better in Kashmir. But then again, they were again at the receiving end. And at current, there is no that they are suppressing the people's will not only through military power. They have used each and every tactics they can use to befool the international audience. They talk about the development. To befool the international audience, they talk about the elections. But we know that these elections, when they were held in 1956 also, at that time UN Security Council said that these elections are not substitute to the UN recognized plebiscite. So these elections cannot be substitute to those resolutions. Likewise, this development is colonized development. If they are doing anything, what they are doing, they have already allocated 700,000 canals of land to the non-state subjects. What is that? That is colonism. That is not the development. It is called a settler colonism. They are bringing the people from outside India to settle in Kashmir, to change the political demography of Kashmir, to change the religious demography of Kashmir, and in order to erase it. But the people of Kashmir have confronted it till now. They are confronting it. They have a resolve to do it. They will take their movement to the next level. As they have in Kashmir at present, you will see that you will not see anything about the press, in the press, about the happenings around in Kashmir, about human rights violation, about the political situation in Kashmir, that press looks like PR. But as Mirza Wahid said, he wrote a novel, and then he said most recently that if I am not writing, someone else will write. Don't think that you have snatched all rights of the people of Kashmir living in Kashmir, but there are people outside Kashmir who will continue to write. It's because of those people who are outside the Kashmir. They do write, they do make comments, and they do write international, and that is
right, that the people get to know of what is actually happening.
That is why there is international opinion about India, about India's human rights record, about this current Modi dispensation is changing.
Okay, let's hope this change brings a value-added change to the people of illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. All they want is the right to self-determination, a plebiscite. Give them that, and let's see where things go from there. Thank you very much, Altaf and Wani sahab. Thank you very much, Dr. Amna, to have stayed with us during the entire show. Last story before we leave you is the International Day of Remembrance of the Victims of Slavery and Transatlantic Slave Trade that is being observed across the world today. This International Day is a time for reflection even for our people today, for our youth, on what needs to be done, because there are still traces of this slavery, this mechanism that continue to prosper in different parts of the world. It is also time to educate our people and our youth on how to take things forward. In 2006, the UN General Assembly, through Resolution 61/19, recognized that the slave trade and slavery are amongst the worst violations of human rights in the history of humanity, bearing in mind particularly their scale and duration, and designated this day, 25th of March 2007, as this International Day for the commemoration of the 200th anniversary of the abolition of the transatlantic slave trade. Many years have passed since that day was recognized, and today we are in 2025, but still we need to understand, comprehend and implement rules and regulations that completely abolish slave trade from all our states, from all our colonies, and from our mindset as well. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new story segments that pertain to us here in Pakistan. Stay safe, have a blessed Ramadan, or the few days that are left. We'll inshallah see you tomorrow. Allah Hafiz.